Hi everyone, welcome to the channel for another pause for thought about how the baddies are making a mess everywhere they look, everywhere they stand, with every word and deed. In a minute I'll be shining a light on all of that, but before we kick off, here's a quick top up on how you can support the channel and make it possible. Go to patreon.com, find me by name, part with some cash, that's all there is to it. You get exclusive question and answer sessions every week, and you get early access to everything I do. There's competitions. There's one on at the moment, so join up while the going's good and get stuck in. The link's in the notes below and on my website, neiloliver.com. And just as a by the by, if you look over my shoulder, I've got my little iron stove on because it's perishing cold in Scotland. So if you hear some clicking and knocking, it's not the sound of distant gunfire, it's just thermal dynamics. Let's get on with it. It's the 11th of November as I'm saying this. Now, I didn't watch the Remembrance service this year on the television. I don't watch the television. But I haven't watched the Remembrance service for a few years now. Not watching that ritual of the royals and the latest crop of politicians on the Sunday on or closest to 11/11, it's another part of what happened to me 5 years ago. I often think about the war dead, don't get me wrong for a moment. Not every day, but often. For all sorts of reasons they come to mind. And I certainly think about the war dead. I'll never stop remembering the murder, which is what it was, of millions of men and boys during World War Parts 1 and 2 so far. But now, and after a lifetime of watching, and I used to stop and sit down and watch the Remembrance service every year, year after year. But now, after all those Remembrance days, I find that if I so much as catch a glimpse of the likes of Blair and Brown and Cameron and Johnson and Starmer and Charles Windsor and the rest of that family, the whole damned lot of them standing there in the shadow of the cenotaph in Whitehall, in their toy soldier uniforms or in their greatcoats, with their poppies on their lapels and wreaths in hand, if I so much as catch a glimpse of their rehearsed expressions, faux sadness, faux respect, I have to turn away and swallow down the bad taste in my mouth. That those men, and it is mostly men, successors and inheritors of those who in their day consigned the tens of millions to the charnel house, that those men would dare to stand there in a blatant mockery of honouring the dead makes me sick to my stomach. I'll continue to remember the dead men and boys, but I will never again watch the pantomime of the puppets. Long before I realised the fakery of the placeholders at the cenotaph, I knew that all the worst trouble in our modern world, all of it, began with the obscenity of World War Part 1. And that was an obscenity. Only more recently did I come to understand the dead were sacrificed like lambs to the slaughter, as the poets and songwriters have it, simply to perpetuate the power and wealth that to this day props up the men in great coats who dare to lay wreaths at the cenotaph. Before the war, the money power faced imminent disaster, the comeuppance that they still deserve and have never yet received. By the end of the war, 1918, 1919, they had not only avoided financial disaster, but they had reset the world in their favour. From that time on, it was the money power, those empowered to create and control currency and debt that finally and without challenge ruled the world. You make a good argument for the fact that they always had, or that they had long before the war of 1914-1918. But by the end of that war, it was fixed and permanent as never before. They and their replacements have been doing the same ever since. When all else fails, whenever their behaviour means their control of the debt and the currency is imperilled, they take us to war. World War Part II, Cold War, Vietnam, War on Terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, Syria, all of it. More besides. When all else failed, they sent men and boys to war and saw their financial woes washed away in torrents of blood. God forgive me, in my own recent past, I failed to see that the war in Iraq, driven by the lies of Blair and Bush about weapons of mass destruction that never existed, was about reshaping the world in the image of the warmongers. They wanted a war, so war happened right enough. Whatever happened on 9/11 was a false flag. It's that simple. All the trouble we have come to know as Islamism also has its roots in World War Part I. If the money power hadn't taken us to war that way, the world would be altogether different. But our world runs on a war economy, and so war is what we get, one war after another. Back home, the ghouls in greatcoats welcome coffins, drape them in flags, and once a year they put on sad faces and greatcoats and lay wreaths at stones. The cenotaph in Whitehall was only meant to be a prop. It was designed by Edwin Lutyens. It was made of plasterboard and only supposed to last for a day. But because the people, wholehearted, broken-hearted, focused so much genuine grief on the thing, genuine heartfelt grief without end or relief, only on account of that was a decision taken to replace the plasterboard with Portland stone. Fabian Ware, the man credited with creating what we know as the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, that looks after those serried ranks of gravestones all over France and elsewhere in the world. He calculated that if the British and Imperial dead of World War Part I were to rise from their graves and march 4 abreast down Whitehall, that it would take them nearly 4 days to pass the cenotaph. I have tried to picture that. Imagine what that would look like. More recently, I've wondered what they would make, all those men and boys, what they would make of the world of now. Down some cold field in a world uncharted, the young seek each other with questioning eyes, wrote the poet Humbert Wolff. They question each other, the young, the golden-hearted, of the world that they were robbed of in their quiet paradise. What would they say? What would they say, those clean-limbed, Lightfoot lads, about Ukraine, about the women and children of Gaza, about the atrocity of Sudan? What would they say? I honestly don't know. I like to think those dead would charge as one and drive off those politicians and royals, chase them into the Thames maybe, and watch them washed out to sea and out of sight. Everyone left behind by those dead of 1914 to 1918, everyone that knew them while they lived, is gone now. And what do we do in their name? On Remembrance Day and on every other day, we watch or turn a blind eye to more war. After the war to end all wars. It's obscene. Boris Johnson's intervention in Kiev signed the death warrant for 1 million, nearly 2 million men and boys in Ukraine, and he puts on a greatcoat and a sad face and stands at the cenotaph. Keir Starmer is doing everything his paymasters tell him to perpetuate that same war, the war with Russia the globalists need like vampires need blood. And he puts on a greatcoat and stands at the cenotaph to honour the dead. Major General Smedley Butler, who lived and died as the most decorated Marine in US history, 16 medals, including 2 Congressional Medals of Honour, so that we can assume he knew what he was talking about when it came to war. He was an anti-war activist, long before the end. Butler is the man famous for saying war is a racket. He also said, and I quote, "I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period I spent most of my time as a high-class muscleman for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the national Citibank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the international banking house of Brown Brothers in 1902-1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies in 1903. In China, in 1927, I helped see to it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back on it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents." Butler's been dead since 1940, and still it goes on. And no one is listening, at least not in any way that makes a difference. War is a racket, and the politicians and royals we watch gather at the cenotaph are the servants of the racketeers, nothing more and nothing less. I'll never forget the slaughter, and slaughter is what it was, and slaughter is what it still is. Slaughter of other people's children, in uniform and in civvies. Slaughter for money, slaughter for power. All of it set in train by men and women who watch it from places of comfort and safety while counting their share of the profit. It's always the same and always will be the same. Old men who know each other send young men to kill other young men they don't know. Once enough young men are dead, the old men meet to shake hands and divide the spoils. I will remember the dead on many days and for many reasons. I'll remember them on 11/11, but never again will I watch the men in greatcoats.